So we're going to hopefully laugh a little bit today too, but let's start with some philosophy. It's the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Wouldn't that be nice? You don't have to accept everything I say today, but let's entertain some thoughts together, some civil dialogue, and I've got some overarching themes for you. Energy is just vital. It's vital for everything in the world for human flourishing. And all forms of energy have pros and cons. There's nothing perfect out here. Okay. And finally, security requires optionality. We have to have options out here. So these are some themes, and we'll hopefully loop through them. Start with some context, some other philosophy. Yogi Berra, my favorite philosopher. If the world was perfect, it wouldn't be, and we know that. It's not a perfect world, so that leads me to one of my axioms that most people don't even know how gasoline's made or where electricity comes from. But they think they do, all right? And they vote. And this is what leads us to a lot of the energy things that are happening globally today. Exhibit A, Southwest Airlines getting on the plane, people versus fossil fuels on the backpack. I don't mind the passion. I work with students, I don't mind the passion. But put your feet where your passion is and walk. Okay? Don't fly, because that baby's flying on jet fuel. And it will be for a very long time, regardless of what some say about electric planes. And this is one of the great things I call energy irony. And we'll hit some energy irony throughout the talk. It's not hypocrisy. It can look like it, but it's education. It's understanding things. So think about energy security and economic security and climate security or environmental security. We geologists love these ternary diagrams. Everything has to sum to 100% on here. So reliable energy, affordable energy. I don't call it clean. Clean is a meaningless word to me. What does it mean? So if you mean low emissions, talk about low emissions energy, okay? So there they sit. If you want 100% low emissions, guess what? You get 0% of everything else. That's how these diagrams work. Now, it's not exactly that way in the real world, but it's kind of like that. We've got to think about how these come together and this challenge of trade-offs. There are trade-offs in the energy world, right? And I call this lovingly the radical middle. It's been radically lonely for a very long time, okay? But we're starting to kind of populate it a little bit. Another way to think about this is energy security. It underpins what? It underpins healthy economies. Every economy on the planet has secure energy, healthy ones, and that allows you to do what? Invest in the environment, okay? You invest in the environment when you can afford to. And I'll talk about this a little bit more, but that's our radical middle. Let's take an 8-year romp. Pre-Paris, we're down here with kind of the economy and thinking about that, and Paris pulled us toward climate security. Okay, fine. COVID said, no, come on back. You know, let's talk about the economy again and see if we can get through that, and then net zero emissions out of Europe. And then COP26, the big conference of the parties, climate conference in Glasgow 2 years ago, way toward climate. And Mr. Putin said, no, come on back. I'm going into Ukraine. I'm going to weaponize energy, both economically and physically. Let's talk about energy security. And every global leader on the planet began to talk openly about energy security again. They always have behind closed doors, but now openly. And then in Egypt this summer, COP27 kind of pulled us back, and the African nations spoke with one voice. Fossil fuels will lift us out of poverty in Africa. You did it. We're going to do it. So we got the radical middle surrounded in 8 short years. Let's just keep kind of converging. We can do it. So some fundamentals for us as we think through these things. We used to cook indoors, okay, and heat ourselves 1,000 years ago. The first form of energy has always been the sun. It's not the newest, it's the oldest. It grew the hay that we put into our vehicles. They pulled their own energy, and then we used the motion of wind and the motion of water to do useful work. Been around a long time, and bigger dams came along. We started killing whales to get their fuels to light our homes, and this is kind of the energy that existed forever, Stone Age, Bronze Age, etc. And then we found coal, condensed plants. Nature did it. And you burn coal, you boil water, make steam, turn a turbine, run a generator, and make light inside the home. That changed the world. This changed the world, electricity. And then liquid hydrocarbons came along. We refined those and put them in our vehicles. Methane, mostly hydrogen, CH4, and then finally nuclear. Okay, and is this the new energy? Why am I showing you all this? Because this is the most important concept in energy. It's called energy density. This is in surface power density. You could do it in volume or weight. Energy density. For 1,000 years, energy has been getting denser. Not a little denser, hundreds of times denser. And we need that to power our modern economies. It's what allows this. Think of all the energy being used in this room right now. And we have words for these things, renewable and thermal, clean and dirty. I promise your kids learn these words in school. Kind of judgmental. On the other side, this intermittent and reliable, Yeah, that's kind of right too. Weather dependent and firm, we can keep going. This is electrons and molecules. The stuff on the left makes electricity. Electricity isn't energy. It's electricity that's made from things. Stuff on the right, you can burn molecules to make electricity, but you can burn them and do other things too, like cement and steel, ammonia and fertilizers and things that take a lot of heat that doesn't come from electricity. Okay? So we need electricity and fuels. The world does. And it always will. Okay? Everything in our lives depends on energy. This is your Dr. Seuss moment. This is hard, so you can applaud at the end. Are you ready? Our homes and our phones, our pets and our jets, our heaters and our beaters, our water, our daughters, our sons, and everything they wear, our packs and our snacks, our frames and our games, and our waste and paste, and our light and our sight, our stuffy nose and our clothes, our wheels and our meals. Everything depends on energy. Thank you. People don't know this. They think about the gas pump and the plug. Everything depends on energy. And the sad reality is most people in the world can't even meet the basic needs. Some food, a shelter, light, water. Okay, and look, there are three kinds of people in the world. Those who are good at math and those who aren't. So which of the three are you? So let's do some simple arithmetic here. A human being in countries in Africa consumes in kilowatt hours energy. Not much, it turns out. We filmed Switch On, our film on energy poverty in Ethiopia and Kenya and other places. Here's my fridge. It's 9 times more than a person. I have 2 fridges. How many have 2 fridges? Don't be shy. Oh, almost there. Keep it in the garage. We do that in Texas. That's efficient. The old beer fridge. 20 times more than a person with 2 fridges. I'm not going to talk about ESG except for this moment. Global ESG. To people who don't have much energy, E to them is some clean water, some soil or local clean air. S might be a school. How about a little health care? Governance, get me out from under an autocrat. So I actually have a voice. That's global ESG, and it matters. It's really different from kind of where it has evolved in the rich world. And I wrote a piece just last week on The Hill. It's gone kind of viral. Check it out. The road out of poverty is paved by a lot of energy. We talk about some of these things. So it's quiz time. You didn't know you had to take a quiz today. You're going to get 5 questions. If you don't pass all of them, you don't get to leave. No, it's the honor system. So here we go. What percentage of the global population live in some level of energy poverty? Just in your head, what percent live in some level of energy poverty? Okay? Don't yell it out. No cheating. Okay. So let's look at the data. Severe economic poverty across the bottom and low electrification rates. And this is where Africa sits. Parts of Africa are fully electrified, I know, but in the aggregate. And the population is about the size of the circle. Really severe poverty, low electrification. 3 times more people in Asia now, 3.5 times more people, 4.5 billion people. Less severe poverty, a little more electrified, and Latin America sits here. There's a trend. Get access to energy, start to come out of severe poverty. This relationship is very strong. The future, we see Latin America coming off and Asia growing people, some moving up to the right, and Africa almost doubling in population as they begin to. And this is an increase in energy demand. These forecasts that say global demand for energy is going to go down. No, it's not. Okay. More people, more emergence into health, we hope, healthy economies. 75% of the world live in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. 3 out of every 4 today, and they are growing faster than the developed world. I've been lucky, 60 countries. Here they are, color-coded by the number of visits. And I met a lot of people. Met this man in Ethiopia, my age. He had tears in his eyes when he told me his grandkids would have something he never had. They were in school for the very first time. We head over to Nepal and see Sana Kanchi. She's featured in our film, all these are. Cooking indoors with wood and dung and biomass of various kinds, like 2.6 billion people on the planet still do, and dying. When we went to the Seni Memorial Hospital, tough scene. Kids dying from particulates, pneumonia, moms of cancer, and cataracts. 3 million people a year dying from indoor smoke. 3 million. That's what COVID-19 killed in 2020. And we shut down the world's economy for that. Okay? Every year. Very solvable. Very solvable. Back to Africa and Kenya. We see 2 light bulbs in a church dangling from the ceiling, and it doubles as a school now, and these kids coming home. I took this picture, it's a lot bigger, I zoomed in, walking over mounds of garbage and polluted water and polluted soil in their uniforms. Of the 60 countries I've been in, every time, the worst environments are where it's poor. Every time. They can't afford to clean it up. India, some of the most, go to Vietnam, and here's Than in the red shack, and she carries her crippled son on her back every morning across that plank to get him into a school. This theme of school is so important to the world today. Education in India, severe poverty and severe wealth, some of the most extreme that you've seen. And come back to the Western Hemisphere in Colombia. We brought First Solar, installed it over 8 days. You can see the array. It's a 3.5 kilowatt array, about like you'd put on, half of what you'd put on a U.S. home, one home. Mud huts, thatch roofs, lights, ceiling fans, and these kids, this is the indigenous Arhuaco people, the village is Gunchukwa. Half of them will die before they become adults. Tooth infection, diarrhea. Won't kill you. Remember the ESG to them, and with a mamo that last night, they'd carved a post. We put a light in the little dirt square. They'd never seen each other at night in their own village except over a fire. It was remarkable, powerful moment. So when you look at this distribution and you think about global income, severe poverty is in yellows and reds. It's everywhere, but it's focused in subequatorial regions. Here's a city livability index, put 100 and something cities. Not very livable where? Where it's poor. Here's highly livable, the blue cities on top of the blue wealth. I mean, it's 1 for 1, okay? So you start to think about the emerging economies where all the people live. They're in energy poverty for the most part. They need something affordable to get started, just to get started. And then you come up to the developing economies in the pinks, and it's across Latin America and Eastern Europe, et cetera. They need energy security. They have electricity, but it's not reliable to them. It comes and goes a lot, unpredictably to them, and so they need reliable energy. And then the rich world, the blues, us, we want climate security, okay? We want it clean. Well, the cleanest air in the world, not atmosphere, air, is green and yellow. Where is it? Where it's rich. The dirtiest air, red, where? 1 for 1, where it's poor. Over and over, water, soil, poor countries can't afford to clean up the environment. 60% of the world live in some level of energy, more than today, energy poverty. I don't know how you did on the question. It is the honor system. The reality is that security drives this. And it's really complicated, and it varies tremendously across the globe. Energy security does. It creates this paradox. I first said this a long time ago in Quito, Ecuador, I think. Energy won't end poverty, but we can't end poverty without energy. Got to have it to start lifting the world out of poverty. Time to power the people. So that brings us to energy security, and we've got to strive to be both completely factual and factually complete. I said this first hearing on climate Manchin's hearing in the Senate 2 years ago now. I was one of 4 asked to testify and talked about the difference between completely factual and factually complete. Let's take a look at the Winter Storm Uri. I've never shown this very often, maybe twice these data. This is what happened in February of 2021 back in Texas. The temperature got cold for 2 weeks. That horizontal blue line is below freezing, the highs and the lows in Dallas. And we had blackouts for 6 days. People died. A lot of people focused on the blackouts and said natural gas, the red, fell 40%. And even the final FERC report, if you look at it, says what? Gas accounted for the majority of outages. Well, that's completely factual. Okay. Is it factually complete? You know, well, damn, it was cold for 6 days going into Valentine's Day too, wasn't it? And there were no blackouts. Look at what was happening here. The normal consumption, about 40,000 megawatt hours, went way up when it was cold, met that, and then had blackouts, and then kind of came back down to normal. Isn't that interesting? Fuel by fuel, what went on? Let's look at normal and blackout time. 5,100 from nukes, dropped 14%. A circulating pump froze at South Texas project. How about coal? 8,700 was cranking during the 5 cold days, all out. Then some coal piles froze, down 9% in blackouts. Solar, we don't depend on much in the winter in Texas. Good thing, because it fell 33%, what was there. Solar's hard in the winter. Low latitude, cloudy, short days, snow, stuff like that. Here's wind. We have a lot of wind in Texas, the most of any state by a lot. Here's normal. It fell tremendously, came back a little bit, 55% down in the blackout, wind was. A lot of turbines froze. Okay. And here's gas, isolated. Remember, 40% gas was the problem. Interesting, because it went up 233% from normal in the blackout. Who knew? You wouldn't know even from UT reports. Yes, some things need to be fixed, but it's the only thing that went up by a lot, and it got really expensive because of the market structure. So you come back and you say, what do you think? What mix would you do? How would you fix this? Well, you're in Colorado. Let's look at a Colorado example. Mr. Bloomberg wrote a piece saying, winter blackouts highlight need for clean energy. Restoring America's access to solar-powered electricity or restricting is an expensive and dangerous proposition in our changing climate. You can write stuff like this when you own the media. Bloomberg in Bloomberg, okay? Nice job, Michael. Brilliant. You had a couple of cold days earlier this year, didn't you, at the end of January? Remember those? What happened? Well, hydro was zoop. Here's your solar. Here's your wind. Here's your coal. Here's your gas. What do you think? Forget the politics. What do you think? Okay? I think energy options matter. I think these are all important. They do different things at different times. Optionality is important. Quiz time. Which sources of energy have decreased since 1965 globally? Which primary sources have gone down since 1965? Okay? All the way from nuclear down to biomass. They're kind of in order of density. Well, here's the data. My slides are all color-coded. Coal, gray, green oil, red gas, orange nuclear, blue is hydro, etc. So here's the global data for coal and oil. It's very dense. Makes a lot of CO2 when you burn it, all right? Still kind of level, but still going up. You can see the COVID dip there. Here's gas and nuclear. Gas has gone up tremendously. Nuclear is still going up. They're very dense, less CO2. And then here's hydro and solar and wind and other things. They're not dense, but they don't make much CO2. There are trade-offs. They do different things. That's the Great Recession. When the world goes into recession, we consume a little less energy. Look at the dimple. And here's COVID. That's the data now. See the dip? Some said structural, we'll never go back to consuming that much energy in the world. We're already consuming more energy than pre-COVID. Already, okay? But that's the data. We consume more coal and oil in the world than everything else combined. By a lot, still. This isn't capacity. This is actual generation of something in exajoules in this case. Doesn't matter the units really. No source of energy has gone down globally, not even hay. We're consuming more hay than we ever have. There's more people, okay? A lot of animals, a lot of other uses for hay that we're putting into various bio things now. So it's completely factual. Solar and wind are growing fastest of any other source. Look at the data. They're exponentially growing. They're getting cheaper. It's phenomenal. It's awesome. What would make this factually complete? How many students in the room? I hear there are a few. Okay, hiding in the corner. You're smart. We can get out of here if need be. This guy goes too crazy. You probably learned this in college. You probably learned this in high school, right? Fastest growing forms of energy. What would make it factually complete? Students? What do we got to do? I'm a professor. You have to answer. What do we have to do to make this a little more factually complete? What is it? Zoom out. A. Who's your professor? A for the day. Let's scale it. It's right here in the data. There they are. And I'm not picking on solar and wind. This is the data. Solar and wind have accounted for about 10% of the growth in energy demand globally. 10% of the growth, not the base, since they started. And yeah, exponential growth is terrific. But we consume so much energy and it's not slowing down, really. Now, same data by region, North America, Europe, Russia, Middle East, largely flat for a few decades. Here's Asia. Look at the left, 1965, no energy in Asia. Look at the right. And then Latin America and Africa just getting started. Remember, 3 out of 4 people live here and are growing faster than everywhere else in the world. Let's focus in on China. Total energy, not power fuels. Coal, everything else. China consumes more coal than all the other energy combined, by quite a bit still. No COVID dip in China. It went up, okay? China leans on coal. Chairman Xi has been very clear. I mean, yes, he'll talk about climate for sure, but we will not sacrifice energy security for climate in actions and mostly in words. Let's lay India right on top of China. India will pass China in population this month. We're pretty good at those kind of demographics. You see the COVID dip in India. Same population, big difference. India consumes a quarter of the energy that China does today. Per capita is 25%. Slide India to the left, 25 years. Watch close. Look familiar? If India does what China did, game over climate. Game over. And they're saying they will. For baseload, firm, dispatchable, other options would be terrific in India. But yet, it means really they're expanding their coal. We did it, Germany did it, China's doing it, India has coal. It's affordable and reliable to them. Globally, the coal consumption looks like this. We've cut ours in half in the rich world. Good work. Cut it in half. Here's Asia, and here's the rest of the world's coal. And it's not just China. Pakistan is moving toward coal away from gas. Bangladesh away from renewables toward coal. Vietnam, etc. It's an Asian story. Today, coal is an Asian story. Now let's put, well, except when things get tough, sorry. Coal's a German story if Russia cuts off the gas, right? 13% increase in coal in Germany because they can afford it, and LNG, and then so everybody else gets kind of stuffed while Germany, wealthy, begins to make their energy system what? Reliable in stressed times. Put natural gas right on top of it, same scale. Look at the right side of the colors. Natural gas is increasing everywhere in the world, except Europe, kind of flat. The gas to coal ratio has gone from 39% to 91%. Gas will pass coal globally. Not that many years. Natural gas is a global story. A good thing. Does a lot of good work for the world. So what are we going to do? Here's India. This isn't in units. This is percentage, the mix. Remember, India consumes a quarter of the energy that China does. So don't think of it in units, mix. But there's China's mix. Coal and oil, 74%, down from 83% in India. Here's the US, 48% coal and oil, a lot more gas. Here's Europe, 47%, a lot more solar. This is in the world today. Look at that interesting transition, if you will, from what it used to be here to what it is now. And it's happening in the world today. I was in France just 2 weeks ago speaking to Total Energies. France gets a lot of its energy from nuclear, the orange. Is that mix the future? Dense, no emissions, affordable once it's built. Is that the future of clean energy? Maybe we can solve climate change without nuclear power. I mean, even the comics are getting into it. In this case, a relatively, well, everybody's younger than me, female. And yeah, we have solar and wind, and then data steps in and says, no. Oh, darn. A lot of energy people, I know a lot of energy people. And all the energy people I know that are not, I won't even say that. Most energy think you have to have nuclear in the mix. Okay. Has to be part of that future. So let's talk about the resources. Quiz time. What percentage of U.S. oil and gas production comes from shale? What percentage? Oil and gas, you can think of them separately if you want. Here we are. Well, this is work that's been done at the Bureau, my day job, for the last dozen years or more. The size of the circle is technically recoverable resources. So the bigger, the more technically recoverable. Changes with technology and price. Red is gas, green is oil. The yellow is what's been extracted so far from those circles, proportionally. Here's the first, the Barnett. Number of wells drilled, 16,500 horizontal wells. The little Fayetteville is smaller, the Haynesville is quite big, the Marcellus is very large. Come into the oilier basins, the Bakken, the Eagle Ford, Anadarko. You've got stuff in the Niobrara here, Midland, and then Delaware. Over 150,000 wells, and that's kind of the different mixes of fuels. It turns out that yellow circle, that's what we consume each year, about 41 billion barrels of oil equivalent. That's just 11 billion barrels of oil equivalent. That's just 41 years to extract all of those circles. It's not that much, is it? So if you look through time, here's the Barnett and the Fayetteville, the first two gas basins. They have peaked, and they're way down. Now it's a long tail. Add the Haynesville, which had peaked and came back, roaring back. We knew it would at the right price and technology. Shrink those down to scale and add the Marcellus and the Utica. And you can see the shale gas is still rising, but some basins have gone down. A lot of gas comes from these oily basins. There's that contribution. And here's the conventional gas. So the construction of all the gas in the country is still going up, but each basin has its own challenges, right? Same with oil. Bakken, Eagle Ford, the ones that led. Pretty flat now. You can see the COVID dip. And then on comes West Texas and conventional oil. So everything is kind of still going up, but the same kinds of challenges. We've gone from 5% oil to over 60% from shale, and the same for gas. Over 60% now from shale. The only place in the world that's done that. But look at the upper right. It's starting to plateau. Won't last forever. Policy matters a lot. Okay. Some might say, good. Let's kill it. The sooner the better. Others might say, whoa. But think hard about our investability, our infrastructure, the things that allow technology and technically recoverable to continue. This has impacted the U.S. over 60% from shale. As a result of that, the price of gas, remember pre-Great Recession? Volatile in the U.S. from $5 to $15, dancing all over the place. And along comes shale, and the production from shale doubled the gas production, and it stabilized gas price, 3 to 4. It saved Obama, got us out of the Great Recession. Trump rode the wave. Here it sits, one of the greatest changes, energy changes ever in history. And the world didn't benefit from this. Yet people still hate gas. I took this picture in Aspen. You've eaten under these things, right? Have you? Sit outside, chilly night, just heat the atmosphere directly. Cut out the middleman. They're passionate about climate change in Aspen. It says it right on the propane tank. And for the Californians in the room, I spoke there a couple times last year. We're sitting out at a big conference. We're in our short sleeves. How many of these things are burning? Does California know propane is gas? I mean, they're cutting off hookups. You're cutting them off here in Colorado, aren't you? Cutting off gas hookups. Just going to say this word again, optionality. Optionality, all right? Price has gone up in gas in this country. It's come back down a little bit since I made this figure. But let's scale it relative to Europe. Look at the price of gas in Europe. Have you seen it? 600% more. 400 to 700% depending. And they move kind of together. Blame it on Ukraine. Well, no, went up a lot before Ukraine. It's fundamentals. This is the consumption of gas in the world by big geopolitical regions, right? Consumption. We consume the most, Asia's next. Here's the production of gas. There's only 2 regions in the world that consume a lot more gas than they produce. Europe and Asia. Need some options. Reserves of gas globally. This is what shale did for North America, the dark blue. It's hardly noticeable compared to Russia and the Middle East, gas reserves, and then here's the rest of the world. Are we starting to plateau in reserves? We've been growing them forever. Are we starting to see a structural plateau? If you never found another MCF, it's about 47 years of production. Stupid number. We're going to find more. Well, the world's going to find more. I hope we do too. We need it. Oh, Europe and Asia. Not much in terms of gas reserves. Asia's trying. Europe's not. So no production, no reserves. Who's importing LNG? Oh, Europe and Asia. That's the whole global import scene of LNG. They need it, at least for now. They need options in natural gas. I get it. So what natural gas does a lot of amazing things. One of them is makes electricity. So here's Europe's electricity. Been coming down in these things by policy and going up to a third now in solar, wind, and other things by policy. How's that working out? What's the price of electricity here? Give me a feel for it. 9, 10 kilowatt hour. It's about 60 cents in Europe last summer. Again, 6x, 600% more. Businesses can't compete at these energy costs. Industries and companies are leaving Europe to go compete on the global stage. And yes, it's been remarkable, the cost of solar and wind coming down, but it can't last forever. I want to be very clear, particularly to all of you who regulate. When you hear LCOE, levelized cost of energy or electricity, you think it's levelized. That's what's reported when they say solar and wind are now cheaper. That's at the plant gate. That's at the bus bar. That's where it's generated. It's not the cost to you. The cost to you is 60 cents because you have to make it reliable. It costs a lot of money to make it reliable. Texas is thinking of spending $10 billion to build a bunch of redundant gas plants so that we can have reliable electricity in the future. A lot of interesting things going on around this. This is policy. The energy mix in Europe is driven by policy. You can't point the fingers any other direction. You can't blame Mr. Putin. He exacerbated it. This is policy. It's policy in California. It's policy in New York. I put out a piece in Fortune late last fall. Reducing options doesn't work. Just ask Europe and the US where gas price. We need optionality. Same story in oil. Here's the consumption. Here's the production. There are only 2 geopolitical regions in the world that consume a lot more oil than they produce, Europe and Asia. They need options. Here's the reserves. Our reserves grew. Some was shale. Nothing in Europe. There's the Middle East oil. And even Latin America is now bigger than North America in oil reserves. Is it plateauing? It's about 50 years if we never find another barrel. Same story. Look at the reserves of oil in Europe and Asia. There aren't any. They need options. To oil, I get it, but the world doesn't. Europe and Asia do. Enter the electric car. Says it on the license plate, electrons. They're charging with an electric pump running on diesel. You know, it's like, what? Have we lost the thread? We're burning diesel to make electricity to charge inefficient batteries. I mean, now let's look at that on a global scale. Red is China, purple is Europe. We've got about 17 million EVs in the world today. Actually 22 now. This was about a year and a half ago. The forecast is to go to 55 million by 25. Asia charges theirs with coal. You've seen the data, the red. Look, I didn't have any accurate numbers, so I just made this one up. Studies have shown accurate numbers aren't any more useful than the ones you make up. How many studies showed that? 87, you know. Yeah. Okay, so let's just make up a number. We're going to electrify half the vehicle fleet by 2040. The vehicle fleet today is 1.4 billion. It's going to grow, but let's make it not grow. 1.4 billion, we'll keep it to 2040. It's going to take 300 million charging stations to do that. To the left of the gray area is what we have today. That's a lot of new charging stations. We'll fit the vehicle forecast in and go to 700 million, half of the world's vehicle fleet. It's incredible growth of EVs. And this administration is trying to force that to the US. Do some simple math. Anybody drive a Tesla? And we'll admit it in this audience, I don't know. Yeah. They're amazing cars. The S is the big one, has 7,000 batteries in it. The size of your cell phone, a little bigger. Most cars, 3,000 to 5,000 batteries, about like. So let's do some math. 700 million times 5,000 is 3.5 trillion new batteries. We have tens of billions today for our gadgets. 3.5 trillion and they wear out. Got to make them again, okay? That's why some people are rethinking the EV. They're not going away from it, they're rethinking it, even in Germany. Top auto execs cooling off on the idea. Kia said, boy, this is going to be hard. Ford said, I'm losing billions in my EV. We got to think of this as a startup. Yeah, probably so. So let's have honest dialogues about vehicles as we go forward. They take lithium. Lithium-ion batteries. We're looking at other metals. That's the lithium in the world today. Here's supposedly the lithium we're going to be able to get from unfinanced projects and recycled supplies, which we don't do today. And here's the demand to power 700 million vehicles. When demand outstrips supply 2 to 1, fundamental economics, things get expensive. Lithium has gone up 900% volatilely in the last 3 years. It takes more stuff, more metals, 700% more for EVs than combustion engines. It's in the battery. There's the metals. I'm not picking on EVs. I'm giving you the data, okay? And it turns out the same for natural gas and coal and power compared to solar and wind. It just takes more metals and stuff because it's low density. More stuff to collect low density than high density. Combustion engines, we got to drill for it and all that environmental impact, and then we burn it and dump it in the atmosphere, CO2 and methane. Solar, wind, and batteries, we mine for it, We make them and then we dump them in landfills. Where does it come from, the stuff? Well, the U.S. leads in oil and natural gas. This is the top 3 producing countries shown on the right for oil and gas, and here are from some other key metals. Kind of distributed reasonably well for production. Where are the mines? Where's it processed? Where are those metals processed? In China. Belt and Roads, brilliant. Buy the metals for solar, wind, and batteries. Own the supply chains. China owns the supply chains. For your panels, your turbines, and your batteries. Okay, but you need to know that. We need to know this as we start to push in to security. Does it make you feel secure knowing that China drives this? Good on China, by the way. You in Colorado still love your EVs? Maybe this is your Tesla, I don't know. Does yours say no oil on the license plate? No, okay, good. You have tires? You know, plastic, electronics, no oil. Energy irony. You may as well say, I love mining. You know, look, Colorado is a proud mining state. I'm a geologist. I don't mind mining. I know John Hickenlooper well, have for a long time. Ask him how the mining's going in Colorado. 4-letter word followed by tinker. Okay. Are you going to start mining here in order to produce the metals we need for the turbines and the batteries and the panels? Are you? Okay. Who's going to do it? Optionality. Yes, little vehicles, smaller, not so much battery weight. They're good. Hybrids, EVs, cities, drive them around, plug them in at night if you're lucky enough to have a plug. As the vehicle get larger, you're hauling more weight in the battery. Hydrogen fuel cells, liquids, big vehicles, these. Optionality. Let's not legislate away physics. Physics can't be legislated. So let's talk about climate security. I never said that, actually. Physics can't be legislated. That'd be a good op-ed. Data has to be used to tell the truth, not to call to action. This is buried in a paragraph. Have you read this book by Hans Rosling, a medical doctor? 10 reasons why you're wrong about the world. We are, and things are better than you think. Really, take the time to read this. It's terrific. Quiz time. Asia emits more CO2 than the rest of the world combined. True or false? Here's the data. North America, Europe, Russia, CO2 emissions since 1990. Here's Asia. And here's the rest of the world. Just went past the rest of the world this year. Asia emits more CO2 than the rest of the world. I can't believe how bad Asia is, you know? Emitting all this CO2. Bad, bad Asia. Why do they do this? Here's why. Above the red line, countries consume more stuff than they produce. And below it, they produce more stuff than they consume. The United States, this is gigatons of emissions across the bottom. We make 5 billion tons of emissions every year, and we're consumers. We consume more stuff than we make now. China makes 10 billion tons of CO2, but they produce more than they consume. Most of the non-rich world, the non-OECD in blue, are producers, and most of the rich world, the OECD, are consumers led by Europe and us. We consume stuff, and it comes from Asia. It comes from the producers. And we say, hey, make it cheap. Burn coal. Deliver it to my door on an Amazon truck. One toothbrush at a time. Isn't that cool? I got a toothbrush from Amazon. That's efficient. Zero emissions? Really? How many atmospheres are there in the world? Oh, damn it. Just one. Does this address climate change? You make my stuff, I'll be clean. Countries, companies, states, make my stuff, I'll be clean. Asia makes our stuff. Everything you consume is made in Asia now. How do you actually get rid of emissions? It's a combination of these 4 things, and they all have to happen. The right tech at the right price, the right scale. Natural gas and nuclear replacing coal, as we've seen happening in the rich world, is working. Hydrogen, geothermal, and hydro, pretty new things. Hydro's been around. Carbon capture, direct air capture. Nature taking up some CO2. Solar, wind, and batteries, where there's good sun and wind, and for people who have nothing to get started and finally doing more with less. Consuming less and we can still do as much. These are the big wedges. We need optionality to reduce emissions and provide reliable energy. Okay? I'll just show you the nuclear quickly. We led in the US. We built 100 reactors. This is how long it took to build them. Time is across the bottom. And then 3 Mile Island happened. It worked. There was no disaster. Jane Fonda's film followed. We stopped building. France started building a lot. Chernobyl happened pretty close to them. They got enough reactors for what they needed. Korea kept building, and then Fukushima Daiichi happened, and China said, whatever. And so you take away the US and France. Nuclear is an Asian story today. It's an Asian story. Small modulars could change that, or at least broaden that. Small modular nuclear reactors. Climate's a big deal. We've got to lower our global emissions of greenhouse gases. The air matters too. It's killing 3 million people a year, even in houses, plus a lot more than that in local air. The water matters and the land matter. It's an interconnected system. Imagine living a life so carefully there was no signs you lived at all. That's none of us. Okay, plenty of signs we're living. But it's an interesting thought. Last question. What forms of energy are renewable? Select all that apply. What's renewable on the list here? Well, going left to right, biofuels on through to nuclear, less dense to more dense. It takes a lot to do biofuels. You got to grow it, process it, refine it, move it, burn it. It becomes a hydrocarbon, you're burning it. Okay. Solar, wind, batteries, etc. You mine all that stuff, you make them, you deploy them, you move it, and then you dump it in landfills for the most part. I mean, have you seen the big solar array in the Middle East now? Take a minute to think what this is. That's the solar array. What is that? That is a human being and their shadow. That's the artist. This is sand art. It's phenomenal. It's so cool. Okay, oil and gas industry, you need some sand artists. You need something to make it a little more cool when you cover the something in solar panels. Because it impacts mining, manufacturing, drilling, refining, transporting, burning it. Lots of impacts. Better in the rich world than the poor world, more heavily regulated. So everything has impacts. Everything. All forms of energy have impacts. You know, we can teach our kids this is the pretty energy and this is the ugly energy. Really? No form of energy is renewable. There's no renewable energy. I said this to 1,100 kids in my TED Talk. Duck and cover. When you have to mine and make the collectors and then dump them in the atmosphere, and then they wear out and do it again over, it's not renewable. Why do we keep using these words? I'll just use wind. Have you seen a copper mine? Here's one in South America. They're gigantic. Wind consumes a tremendous amount of copper. The blades are huge. They're changing the exits in Texas because they're so long you can't get around them anymore. First film switch, old and new wind, flying through the wind farms. They fail occasionally. That's not Photoshop. Most are fine. The big deal there, though, is when these turbine blades wear out, where do they go? This is your neighbor to the north, Wyoming, 100 blades, cut up into thirds and being buried by a big earth mover in landfill. They're inert. It's glue and balsa wood and some stuff. 100 blades. We have 40,000 blades in Texas. Go to Sweetwater and see this. We don't recycle and reuse them. There's stuff coming now, hopefully to do it. We don't recycle and reuse solar panels either very well. And the LA Times put the story out last summer. That's a problem for landfills. Yes, it is. Because there's a lot of them now. Anything that goes to scale is hard. So this dual challenge, this energy transition, what is it? It's addition of energy and emissions reduction. People need energy, more for a while. Let's lower the emissions and the environmental impacts. That's it. So I made a scenario, there's an infinite number of these out to 2065, a 30% renewable. So coal coming way down, oil starting to come down, gas and nuclear going up, and everything else going up a lot. This is the actual slope of energy demand up to 2022, and I lowered that, rolled it over, start rolling it over as we get more efficient. Population growth starts to slow, and you can see here kind of the non-oil and coal stuff. The emissions from coal in that scenario look like this, calculated. Here's oil and here's gas. Here's the non-fossil fuel emissions gap today, and there it is in the future. That's a big deal. A lot less emissions for more energy. But it's not all of it by any means. There's still a lot there that you have to either capture with CCUS or direct air capture out of the atmosphere as you start to lower that. Net zero would be zero. Happy to talk about that in Q&A. It scares people. That 30% scares a lot of people. Okay. And I get called things. I just run a scenario, I get called things. They feel like they're getting trampled, I guess, by fossil fuels. They're in the running the bulls, getting run over. This is the winner of the last photo taken contest, actually. I'm going to show you the runner-up. Here we go. So come back to 30% renewable. Same exact data now, member units and the mix. In percentage terms, it looks like this. People call it business as usual. There's COVID. Can you see it? In percentage terms, you can't even see the COVID dip. These things take a long time to change. Cut coal down by a lot, oil some. They're cut in half together. Gas and nuclear a little more than double, and everything else goes up 500%. Why? Carbon, hydrocarbons, methane, hydrogen, uranium and thorium. This is the transition, the physics transition to denser energy. Why do we need these things? Because you need reliable energy. You have to have things that are dispatchable with things that are intermittent to make them reliable. Optionality. The right has more options than the left. It's a good thing, okay? It's needed for global security and secure energy. There's a lot of oil and gas in that mix. A lot. Can we produce it? Remember, physics works. Oil reservoirs are declining. Gas reservoirs are declining. Just to replace them, 70% by 2040. New. It's not going to be easy. Who produces oil and gas? These are the top 15 producing companies in the world. Aramco leads. Put the two Russian companies together, they're bigger. I have to line up all 5 of the international oil companies to get them there. How does that make you feel? I'm often asked what I worry most about. That. So the supply chains get cut off. Interesting, because it's not so much yet. We don't have the oil we need in the world, or the gas. Go to war. I worry about war, okay? And you start to think about what's happening with the alliances with China and Russia and Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi and Mr. Modi in India. What's happening? What currency are they basing on now? Who's brokering the peace deals? The signs are all here. So we can keep our heads in the sand, or we can start to think about that. I worry about that. Runner-up, last photo taken contest. Okay. Yeah, you know. If you're going to be stupid, you better be tough. And it's a bear for a reason. So let's wrap it up here. This is global income. Faded into the world at night. Here's the world at night. Remarkable satellite image. See where the lights are on? See where they're off? Here's the energy mixes around the world. They're very different. Scale them to be proportional to consumption. That's how much energy is consumed. Asia's consuming half the world's energy now and making all the stuff. Now, we could get rid of coal and oil, as some want to do, leave it in the ground. They're happy. Well, there's some things left. Some want to get rid of gas and nuclear, too. There's even those who want to get rid of hydro because of the environmental impacts. There's 6% left if we did that quickly. Take a look. Let's darken the world's lights by 94%. Here we go. How does that look to you? Really? Okay. It looks like the past to me, not the future. I think we got to turn on the lights. Billion people with nothing, hunger, clothing, shelter, water, education, and health care for another 1 to 2 billion people living in poverty. Women are going for the water, cooking indoors, not in the schools. Differentially impacted by poverty. Population growth directly tied to education. Immigration, migration away from the autocrats happening all over the world today. The ability to invest in the environment with a healthy economy and mitigate, adapt to climate change. These are the big issues. And you bring those together, and it's energy security. It's energy security that addresses many of these challenges. So back to our themes, it's vital for humans. There's pros and cons to everything, and it drives. Energy security matters. So a couple final musings for you. No one owns the truth here. We just seek it. Enough of calling people liars. Enough of this shaming online. Really? Cancel shaming. Let's have dialogues, civil dialogues. And this challenge isn't simple. Enough of the black and white, clean and dirty, good and bad, believer, denier, religious terms. It's not simple. But it's very solvable if we actually deal with it all. If we think about it in the right terms, it's very solvable. My day job is here for 24 years, and I started this not-for-profit many years ago. We make a lot of films. Grab the TED Talk. If anybody says to me, can you come talk to my kids, which somebody says every time, talk to your own damn kids, you know. I got kids. They're grown and gone, and they get this stuff. Talk to your own kids. Give them the TED Talk. That's why I did it. 17 minutes. And our PBS series is out now, and it's remarkable. 2 guests on every episode, really high level. Season 2 is out, 12 more episodes. World Channel picked it up. 100 million households, 200-something PBS stations nationwide, 25-minute episodes. Grab them and listen. All these different topics are on there. It's a lot of fun across the nation. How'd you do on the quizzes? Did anybody get all 5 right? Put the hands up high. This is the first time ever. Did anybody? 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Have you heard my talk before? No, I'm kidding. Good for you. They're not easy. But you're energy people, and these aren't easy questions. So now for your assignment, and then I'll let you grill me. Go to switchon.org. Go there, and when you do, you're going to see this big green button on the lower left. Click it. It's free. Don't worry, and we don't track you. When you click it, you're going to come to a presentation that has all these slides in it. Animated PowerPoints with the data references and my voice under them saying what I would say. I just said it in my living room. Grab the slides, pick the ones you like, and here's your assignment. I want everybody in the room, please, to go give 1 talk this year to 20 people. 1 talk to 20 people. Church group, school, scout troop, civic group. Pick your group, your family. Terrifying. 20 people. And then send me an email when you do it. I did it. And you'll be scared and it won't go well. But you'll get better. What do we got, 200 people here? That's 4,000 people that will be touched. Boom, in real time. You have to do this. People ask me all the time, how are we going to get people educated? You. I promise you there are other people in those rooms giving talks. And they're mostly completely factual, but they're not factually complete. I promise you. Okay. So do that for me and make my job easier. Thanks for your attention today. I think we have 10 minutes for questions.
9 minutes and 45 seconds, so we'll get you out the door in 15.
Okay.
Questions, anybody?
Oh, great. The people who got all 5 questions right are raising their hands.
Yeah.
Give me some hard ones.
Hi, I'm Francie Jacover. I'm a Pickens County Commissioner, so I am somebody who has some decisions to make. But I want to ask you about population growth because nobody talks about it anymore. And when I was a teacher, it was the kids' first concern every time when I asked them about global problems. But it's not talked about anymore. It's not talked about in terms of the Colorado Compact. Nobody talks about limiting people in Phoenix and Flagstaff and Front Range of Colorado. They talk about a million other possible solutions, but not that. And we're concerned because China's population is going down and they're going to make some changes about their birth policies. And everybody's talking about not being able to have enough workers for their jobs, but nobody's talking about controlling population. Could you address that for a minute?
Right up to the last 3 words I could. Controlling population, yeah, that's a tough conversation. Let me address it this way, though. I showed population data here and talked about it. China has plateaued, and they've already changed. They've got a 3-kid or 4-kid policy now, but they're not having kids. And mostly, as you get wealthier, you choose not to have kids because you don't need them to do the labor. And they're not dying, half of them, like in Gunchukwa, by the time they're 18. So you have 1 kid or 2 kids, whatever you can afford, and you have this happy little family that's rich. So the way to accelerate population growth, to decelerate population growth, is through education. All the countries in the world that are highly educated have already rolled over in population growth. The US would be negative population if people were not immigrating here. So would Europe. Okay? So I'm so excited to think about education and slowing and then rolling population growth over. But it terrifies demographers and economists because then all of a sudden, this is why China is scared, there's no growth to drive. And the good thing, we all know, growth is good. You don't grow, you die. All the words we've all learned forever. I wish I could live long enough to see what happens when the population of the world rolls over. And it's not a growth measurement. It's not a growth metric. What are we going to use to determine quality when it's not growth? And I think some smart young people, you'll see this happen. Mid-century probably, you'll see this happen. And there's a lot of cool things to use quality-wise besides growth. So to me, I don't think we can control population. I think education allows for lots of things to happen. Birth control, fertility rates go down. You start to not need as many kids to do the heavy agricultural work and other labor, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, it's happened throughout the world. If you look at global demographics of population, countries, they put them in these kind of tornado-looking plots, but many countries are young at the bottom and old, a lot of young people, not many old people at the top. We're this way. We're heavy old, and China's gone this way. And then they put female and male on the left and right, or whatever now, I don't even know. But, so something like that. And you see different numbers of females and males in China because they had this policy of 1 kid, and so they had males for a long time. And you can see that slant. So those demographics matter a lot in the world. Unfortunately, Africa, which is growing the fastest, is very young. And so you still have it's going from 1.2 to over 2 billion people. It'd be hard to stop that. Education will help. And it takes energy for education. I got to have a light in the room and a light in the school and start to have books and other kinds of technologies that we all benefit from. So I don't not control it, but you can certainly impact it by doing some smart things. And I hope we accelerate those. Now, your local challenges are yours to think about. I don't know. I don't know how you take migration. There are jobs available. People aren't taking them. They're coming from other places. We have it in Texas, too, by the way, in a big way. A lot of the same challenges about employment and work and who's doing the jobs and the whole set of challenges there. So, not easy. Solvable. Yep.
Okay, so Carmia Woolley with the Bureau of Land Management. I know that you only have 4 minutes and counting left.
And I answer in paragraphs, unfortunately, so I'll try to do it in sentences.
So right now, as governments and industry and others continue global conversations, I find that resiliency is one of the biggest challenges with our plans and our programs as we develop them, or try to continue them because people respond, right, to a lot of catastrophes or other things. So it seems to be short term. What components would you include in plans and programs to ensure resiliency for long-term development?
Yeah. If you're using resiliency to mean lasting,
Yes.
okay, and sort of sustainable in some ways, it's a newer term, but kind of the same thoughts. Everybody who puts those plans in place likes them, and they want them to be resilient. Everybody who didn't put them in place sometimes doesn't like them, and they don't want them to be resilient. There are a lot of people in California hoping that the EV mandate is not resilient. They're hoping that the gas cutoffs aren't resilient. They're hoping that they go away because it eliminates optionality. If I mandate an electric vehicle and no combustion engines, if I get rid of gas, I am limiting options, not expanding them. So resiliency is wonderful as long as the programs are highly intelligent and future resilient themselves. That's not easy in a democracy. Look, communism is good for some things. Did he just say that? Yes. We're going to build 50 new nuclear reactors in China. And they do, at a third of the price of the US. We're going to build the largest power plant on the planet, Three Gorges Dam. We're going to move 1 million people. And they do. Yeah, it's amazing. Now, there are other limits to that. But that's very resilient. Longer term planning, more resilient. I hope the leaders are intelligent and thoughtful and can see into the future very well. Quite often, policy isn't quite as intelligent as we hoped it would be. Markets tend to be a little more intelligent, and they adapt things that work. Things people want to pay for and use over and over, and they become affordable, and you don't have to subsidize them forever. And you don't have to create incentives forever on these things that markets adapt. So some blend of reasonable, thoughtful policy and then ending it when they get out, no more, not forever policy, but when it starts to work, and let markets. And if it doesn't work, end it anyway. Don't keep doubling down on it. It didn't work. Quit doubling down on these policies that aren't working just because your base wants you to, and that's who votes. Okay? I'm being very candid with you right now because I'm not elected, and I have tenure. Say whatever the hell I want to. So I hope I'm kind of starting to address resiliency in a way. Yes, it would be better if they didn't swing back and forth every time somebody else comes into power. But that happens to me in the radical middle. That's when statespeople get together, make compromises, are willing to not get everything they want, listen to the other person, and learn and put some things in place that actually work there in that radical middle. That tends to be resilient. I'd love to see more of that. I'd love to see more of you all being in that place instead of out here. Okay. And I'm not saying you're out there, but there are people out there. Okay. Fine, do your thing, but let's not make that policy. Okay. Just my opinion. How am I doing on time? Got a 3:20 flight.
Well, it's 1:39 right now. We can try a
Hour
question,
nine.
and you have
Last
to
question.
one-sentence answer.
Last question. I'll be very brief.
Yep.
Yeah,
Hi,
right.
my name is Ethan Warwick. I'm from Colorado Mesa University. I'm
Are you a professor or a student?
a student.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Our professor's over here, Stephen Sochek. But you said that China produces most of the world's cobalt, but they import over close to 5 billion of it, mostly from the Congo. Would you say that the increased demand for batteries will worsen the toxic mining in poor countries like the Congo?
Will worsen what?
Worsen the toxic mining
Yeah.
and the mining
Yeah.
conditions?
China doesn't produce most of the world's cobalt. It processes most of the world's cobalt. And many other metals too. So it brings it in. Belt and Roads invested in infrastructure. It invested in people. It invested through loans in governments and in economies. And in trade, they got access to these things. So they process most of it from around the world, which means it's going there. There's well-documented examples of human rights violations, the Uyghurs in DRC and other places, depending on, they don't do it as well. They're not as well regulated as we do, mining. Well, the mining that we still do, okay? So yes, human rights violations, the potential to continue to increase, or even not be extreme violations, but just really poor working conditions is there if we put all of that into other countries. The largest lithium deposit in the country today is in Maine. It's in hard rocks, spodumene. Look it up. The Maine legislature said, no, we're not going to mine it. Governor vetoed, they overrode that. Then they have a law that says you have to have EVs. Energy irony is alive and well. Got to have EVs, but we're not going to mine the lithium for you. Okay? We got to start making stuff again. We got to start doing things again in this great nation, and we will regulate and do it very well. We're blessed with a lot of resources. Let's use them. Please keep doing the good work you're doing. It's been a real honor to be here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.